The hallway lights flickered as Captain Jace moved quietly through the silent ship. There were no voices, no footsteps, just the soft hum of the engines echoing like a heartbeat through the walls. Everyone else was asleep in stasis. Only he and the alien navigator were awake now. He stopped in front of her cabin door. It opened without a sound. Thalira stood inside, facing him. Her skin shimmered softly in the low blue light. She tilted her head slightly and gave a small smile. "It's only you and me," she said softly. Before he could reply, she pressed a button and the door closed behind him. The room was quiet. He could hear his own breathing. He looked around. Her cabin was neat, almost too perfect. Strange symbols glowed gently on the walls. Her language, maybe. A small table stood in the center, 2 chairs on either side. She motioned for him to sit. He hesitated but sat down. Thalira watched him with calm eyes, as if studying him. Her smile didn't fade. "You're wondering why you're awake," she said. He nodded. "The ship said it was a system failure. Emergency protocol woke me." She leaned back. "The ship lies sometimes, but not to you." That answer didn't help him feel better. He looked around again. "Where's the AI?" She pointed at the wall. "Still here, just listening." Jace shifted in his seat. "Why? Only us." Thalira placed her hands on the table. "Because the others weren't needed. This part is only for us." He didn't like the way she said that. It felt like more than just words. Her voice was soft, but there was weight behind it. "You're not making sense," he said. Thalira nodded slowly. "You humans always want answers fast, but your minds aren't ready for all answers at once, so we give them in small pieces." She looked at him with that same calm smile but didn't answer. He stood up. "Look, I'm the captain of this ship. If something is going on, I need to know. Right now." "You are the captain," she said, still calm. "But out here, far from your people, titles don't mean what they did on Earth." He walked to the door, pressed the button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. The door stayed shut. He turned. "Open it." "I will," she said. "When we're done." "Done with what?" Thalira stood now. She walked slowly to a panel on the wall and touched it. A small screen lit up, showing space dark, deep, full of stars. But there was something odd. A shape. It didn't look like a planet or a ship. It was just a shadow, floating. "You see that?" she asked. He nodded. "What is it?" She looked at him, her voice lower. "Something that watches. Something that waits. It's not here for me. It's here for you." He stepped back. "That doesn't make sense." "Why me?" "Because you made a choice when you entered this ship. And now, you're part of something bigger." Jace shook his head. "This is a joke. Some kind of test." She didn't laugh. She turned off the screen and looked at him with serious eyes for the first time. "No joke. No test. Just the truth. And it's starting now." The lights flickered again. The room felt colder. Or maybe it was just his thoughts. He didn't know what to believe. But he knew one thing: this wasn't just a normal ship anymore. And Thalira, she wasn't just a navigator. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. She looked at him for a long time, then said quietly, "Not what I want, what you choose. That will decide everything." The door behind him unlocked with a soft click. He looked at it, then at her dot. She smiled gently again. "You can leave, or you can stay and listen, but either way, things will never be the same again." He stood still, thinking. The hallway was just a step away, but something about the room, her words, that shape in the stars. His hand rested on the door button, but he didn't press it. She waited, and the hum of the ship continued, steady and deep, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. The silence in the hallway outside the cabin felt louder than any noise. Jace stood still, staring at the open door behind him, but he didn't step through. His thoughts were heavy. Something in Thalira's words had stayed with him, not just her voice, but the feeling behind it. Calm, clear, and still. He turned back to her. She was sitting again, her hands folded on the table, watching him without blinking. The blue light made her eyes look deeper, almost glowing. "I don't understand," Jace said, finally. "What am I choosing?" Thalira didn't answer right away. Instead, she raised one hand and waved it through the air. A screen appeared. Between them, floating in the middle of the room, lines, numbers, and star maps blinked on it. But something was wrong. The stars weren't where they should be. Their ship was no longer following the original course. He stepped closer. "This isn't our route." "It hasn't been," she said softly. Not since the others went into stasis. You changed our direction. No, she replied. Something else did, but I allowed it. He stared at her. Why? She stood up, walking slowly to the screen. Her fingers danced through the light. The image zoomed in on a single point in space, a dark area, surrounded by stars. But no light came from it. Just a hole, still empty. There's something here, she said, hidden between the stars. Old. Watching Jace frowned. That's just a dead zone. Every scan says it's nothing. Thalira turned toward him. Because your machines only see what they're allowed to. That space isn't empty. It listens. To what? To thoughts. To fear. To truth. He didn't understand. How could space listen? It didn't make sense. But the longer he looked at the dark zone, the more it felt like it wasn't just an image, it was looking back at him. I still don't get why this has anything to do with me, Jace said, almost whispering. She walked closer, until she was standing just across from him. You have something rare, she said. Your species hides it well, but in you, it's more clear. A kind of light inside. I'm just a man, he said. A pilot. I've done nothing special, but your choices are not small, she said. You stayed. You listened. You didn't run. He looked down. Maybe he had stayed out of curiosity, maybe out of doubt. But now he wasn't sure what had kept him there. A part of him felt like he'd been pulled in not by her, but by something else. A feeling, a question. The ship suddenly shifted, just slightly. A soft vibration moved through the floor. The screen blinked. Then, a quiet humming sound started to rise, coming from inside the walls. Not loud, not sharp, but deep, like something far away was calling. Jace stepped back. What is that? Thalira closed her eyes. The signal. From the dark zone. She nodded. What's it saying? I don't speak its full meaning, she replied. But I know what it wants. He looked at her, searching for answers. And what's that? She opened her eyes slowly. It wants to see what makes you human. Jace's chest felt tight. That's not an answer. That's a riddle. Thalira didn't reply. The ship lights dimmed slightly. Then came a soft click from above. A small round drone dropped from the ceiling. It floated in the air, slowly turning, a red light blinking softly on its side. I didn't activate that, Jace said quickly. Neither did I, Thalira whispered. The drone began to glow. A voice came from it, soft, layered, not quite male or female. We see you. Jace stepped back again. Who are you? The voice didn't respond. The drone only floated there, watching, listening. Then the voice said something else. Step forward. Say nothing. Choose freely. Thalira looked at him. This is your moment. They've been waiting. For what? For you to show them what you are, without orders, without fear, without anyone else. Jace didn't move. The drone hovered. Still. Then the lights shifted again. Everything went dim, almost like night. The ship stopped vibrating. The sound disappeared. Only the voice remained, repeating once again. Choose freely. Jace felt his heart beating slowly in his chest. He didn't know what would happen next. But somehow, he knew something had already changed. Not just in the ship, but inside himself. And now, whatever was watching, it was waiting for him to move. Asterisk. The red glow from the floating drone painted soft lines across the walls of the cabin. Captain Jace stood still, the silence pressing against his ears. The voice had spoken again, soft, strange, and layered in a way that didn't sound like any language, but he had understood it. Choose freely. He didn't know what that choice meant, and that's what made it harder. Thalira hadn't moved. She was watching him, her hands folded gently in front of her. Her face remained calm, but her eyes told a different story. They were focused, serious, almost worried. Jace cleared his throat. What happens if I step forward? She said quietly. Then you've accepted their question. And if I don't, then you will go back to your normal path. The ship will return to its original course. You will wake the others. You will continue your life. Nothing will seem different, but something will be lost, she said softly. And you may never know what. The drone hovered silently. It didn't move, didn't flash, just floated there, as if time had paused for his answer. He took one slow breath and stepped forward. The drone immediately glowed brighter, then dimmed. A soft tone rang out, almost like a bell underwater. Then, slowly, the room around him began to change. Not physically, but the light shifted. The walls shimmered like heat. For a second, the cabin disappeared. Now, he was somewhere else. It looked like the ship but empty, the same hallway, the same shape, but it was gray, colorless, like the life had been taken from it. No sound, no hum, nothing. He turned around, but Thalira wasn't there. He was alone. He called out, "Hello?" His voice echoed strangely, as if the space was larger than it looked. He began walking down the hallway, every step quiet, every wall still. No lights blinked, no screens responded, just silence. Then he saw something ahead, a door just slightly open. He walked toward it slowly and pushed it open. Inside was a room he had never seen before, small, round, and in the center of it was a chair, simple, metallic. A small screen floated above it, showing nothing but a blank, dark space. The voice came again. "Sit." He paused. "Why?" "To begin." He looked around. Begin what? Memory. He didn't understand, but something in his chest told him this wasn't a trap. It was something else. A test, maybe, or a key. He stepped forward and sat. The screen in front of him flickered. A shape appeared, a child, small, laughing, running across green grass under a blue sky. He blinked. That was Earth. That child was him, a younger version, long ago, before he ever dreamed of space. The screen shifted again. He saw himself older, struggling at the Space Academy, working harder than others just to keep up. Then his first assignment, his first mistake, his first leadership moment. Each memory passed across the screen. Joy, regret, choices. Then the screen went dark again, and the voice asked, "Why do you choose?" He was confused. "What do you mean? Why do you make choices? What do you hope for?" He took a moment. "Because... that's what we do. We try. Even when we don't understand everything, we move forward." There was a pause. Then the screen changed again. This time, it wasn't him. It was Thalira. She stood alone, on a strange world, her hands behind her back. Tall stone towers surrounded her. The sky was a deep purple. She was younger, or maybe just different, and she was speaking to a group of others like Herbert. Her face was the only one filled with doubt. The others left. She stayed. Then the image changed again. Back to black dot. Jace spoke softly. "She made a choice too, didn't she?" The voice replied, "She believed you would understand." He looked down. The chair disappeared beneath him, and the room slowly began to fade. The hum of the ship returned. The walls shifted back into place. He was in the cabin again. Thalira was standing by the window, watching the stars. He turned to her. "I saw it," he said quietly. She didn't ask what. She only nodded. "Why show me this?" he asked. "Because the others never stayed long enough," she said. "They chose safety. You chose to see." The drone was gone. The silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was waiting for what came next. Jace stepped forward. "So what now?" She turned to him, her voice lower than before. Double quotes now. "We leave the edge of known space and go where?" Her answer came like a whisper. "Where no maps exist. Where your truth might be needed most." And as the stars outside began to shift, Jace knew this journey was no longer about distance. It was about understanding. And whatever waited in the dark was finally watching. Captain Jace stood beside the window, watching the stars drift past, like silent whispers. But these stars looked different, brighter, yet farther. The constellations didn't match any chart in the ship's database. They were off the map somewhere unknown. He looked at Thalira. She hadn't spoken in a while. Her expression was calm, but her eyes kept scanning the space outside, as if looking for something only she could see. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. She didn't look at him when she answered. "Now we move through the space between thoughts." He frowned. "That's not real. There's no such place." "There wasn't," she said softly, "until someone believed it into being." Jace didn't reply. He didn't understand, but he had already accepted that many things out here couldn't be explained the way things were back home. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. A soft chime rang through the ship. "Warning," said the AI's voice. "Unknown interference detected. Navigation systems unstable." He moved to the main screen, pulling up the ship's data. The path they were on was changing again. "Who's altering the course?" he asked. Thalira stepped beside him. "Not a who, a place. It's calling us now." The ship's route had bent, slowly curving toward a dark cloud on the edge of the display. No light passed through it. The scanners showed nothing, Just static. That's not a planet. It's not even space, Jace said. No, Thalira agreed. It's a memory, a memory. Some places are not made of matter, she explained. They are made of what was once thought, once felt, once feared. Jace felt a quiet shiver move through him. The ship slowed. The engines didn't stop, but the motion around them became soft, like drifting. Outside the window, everything turned gray. The stars vanished. There was only fog, endless and still. A gentle tone echoed through the cabin again, but it wasn't from the ship. It was from something outside. Can you hear that? He asked. Thalira nodded. It's part of the test. I thought the test already began. She turned toward him, her voice quiet. That was just the first question. He waited for her to explain. The first question asked if you would listen. She said, this one asks if you remember. Remember what? Something that isn't here anymore, but still lives inside you. He looked at the screen again, confused. Then the fog outside started to move. Slowly, shapes began to form. Not solid shapes, but outlines. Buildings, trees, skies. It was Earth, but not the Earth he knew now. It looked older, simpler, peaceful. Jace leaned closer. That's my home, where I grew up. Thalira didn't move. Step closer. He did. The wall in front of him shimmered, and then without warning, it opened. The fog pulled him gently forward, and suddenly, he was no longer inside the ship. He stood on a quiet road, surrounded by tall green trees. Birds sang. The wind was warm. Everything looked real, but something was off. The sky above him was too still, the air too perfect. He looked around. A small house sat at the end of the road. He knew that house. It was where he lived when he was a child. He walked toward it, unsure what he would find. As he approached the door, it opened slowly. Inside, he saw a younger version of himself, maybe 10 years old, sitting at a table, reading a book. A woman stood in the kitchen. She smiled gently, her back turned. Jace took one step in, then another. No one looked up. He whispered, "Mom." The woman paused for a moment, then she turned. It was her, just as he remembered. She looked at him without surprise, as if she had always known he would come back. "You've grown," she said with a smile. He stepped forward, but his feet didn't touch the ground the same way. Everything here felt light, like a dream that could disappear if he moved too fast. "I don't understand," he said. "You don't have to," she replied. "This place is made from you, from your memory, from what you carry forward." He looked at his younger self, who still didn't react. "Why am I seeing this?" "Because this is the part of you that never stopped asking questions," she said. "The part that still hopes." They wanted to see if it was still alive. She nodded once. "The ones waiting in the dark. They don't understand what it means to remember. They only know how to watch. You're showing them something new." The wind outside shifted. The sky darkened slightly. "They're getting closer," she whispered. "Who?" "You'll meet them soon," she said, gently. "But first, you have to return." He blinked hand. The house began to fade. The road vanished. The light fell away, and then he was back in the cabin. The window showed stars again. The ship was moving. Thalira stood in the same place. He looked at her. "Was that real?" "It was. Yours," she said softly. "That makes it real enough." The cabin was quiet again, but now, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full with something he hadn't carried in a long time, something the watchers had seen, and they weren't finished yet. The stars drifted quietly outside the window, but Captain Jace no longer looked at them the same way. After what he saw at the house, the younger version of himself and the woman who spoke with warmth from a memory, something inside him had changed. He sat in the quiet cabin, alone now. Thalira had stepped away. She said she needed to prepare for what was coming. That phrase stayed in his mind. Not who, but what. The hum of the ship seemed slower than before, like even the engines were waiting for something unseen. Jace walked toward the bridge. The door opened smoothly, and the lights inside were dimmer than usual. The AI greeted him, but its voice sounded different, softer. "Welcome, Captain," it said. "External readings, unusual." He looked at the main screen. The ship had stopped moving. "Why did we stop?" he asked. "No command issued," the AI replied. "Gravity field ahead, not natural source, unknown." Jace frowned and leaned closer. A sphere appeared on the screen, completely black. No light, no motion. It didn't spin, didn't move, it just was. He turned on the scanners. Static. then silence. He tried to reset the system. That's when he heard it. A second voice, faint in the background. It didn't come through the speakers. It came through the walls, like the ship itself was whispering. He leaned closer. The voice was clear now. Soft, not Thalira, not the AI. You are not alone. He stepped back. Who's speaking? The AI replied. No internal voice detected. He knew that wasn't true. The voice returned. She cannot hear us, not yet. Jace turned slowly. The room was empty. Waited. Who are you? The voice didn't say a name. It just whispered. You're being led. Not by her, by those behind her. He walked to the main panel and tapped the logs. The ship's recent path was different than what he remembered. It had made 3 silent course changes, none ordered by him. Not even by Thalira. He tapped the logs again. Hidden codes. He whispered to himself. Who's steering this ship? And then the screen turned black. Not dark black, like it had been turned off from somewhere deeper than the controls. The lights flickered once. Then came a new sound. Footsteps, but not near him. Below from the lower decks. He rushed to the panel. Called the internal scanner. No. Life forms detected. Just him. Just Thalira. And yet, he could hear them. Not just one. Several soft steps. Like something was walking the halls without weight. The voice returned. Louder this time. Listen to your fear. It still knows truth. He stepped back from the console. What do you want from me? Not from you. For you. The lights went out. Just for 3 seconds. But in that time, he saw something on the window. A reflection, not his own. A shape behind him. When the lights returned, nothing was there. He turned, his heart heavy. The room was silent again. Then the door opened. Thalira entered, calm still. But something was different. She looked at him with a new expression. Not worry, not peace, but something between the two. You heard them, didn't you? She asked. Jace nodded. You said I was part of something, but you didn't say someone else was watching from even deeper. Thalira walked to the panel. Because they only speak when you're ready. And you weren't surprised. She placed a hand on the wall. Because I've heard them too. You didn't tell me. They don't want to be introduced. They want to be discovered. Jay stepped forward. Then what are they? Her voice dropped. The ones before names. Before stars. They don't build. They don't destroy. They choose. Choose what? Which voice speaks next in the universe? She said. Which species shapes the future? He blinked. They're testing us. No, she said. They're waiting, watching who we are. When no one gives us a script. Jace felt a strange weight settle inside his chest. He thought he had already passed the test. But this was deeper. They said you're not the guide, he told her. You're being led to. Thalira didn't deny it. I was once like you, she said. I stepped into the unknown. I listened. I followed. And now, I walk with you not as a guide, but as a mirror. Jace walked to the window. The black sphere outside had grown larger, closer, not pulling the ship in, but inviting it. The voice whispered again, soft, not scary, almost kind. We see your heart. Now show your mind. Jace whispered. What does that mean? Thalira answered quietly. It means the next door will open. Not by force, but by truth. The ship lights faded into a low blue. The engines were still. The cabin was quiet, but Jace knew. This was the moment before something began, something that no star map could follow. Asterisk, the stars outside had vanished completely now. Only the black sphere remained, silent and still, larger than before. The ship was no longer moving, but there was no sense of stopping either. It felt as if space itself had paused to listen. Captain Jace sat in the command chair, not touching the controls. There was nothing to control anymore. Every system had gone into a strange kind of sleep. The screens still glowed faintly, but they no longer showed data. Only a soft ripple of light moved across them, like reflections on calm water. Lyra stood near the back of the bridge, hands clasped in front of her, eyes closed. She hadn't spoken in a while. Jace looked at her. You said they're watching. She nodded slowly. Yes, and now, they're waiting. For what? For your mind to speak. He didn't understand. Speak to what? I don't know their language. Thalira opened her eyes. You don't need their words. You need yours. Just then, the AI's voice returned very softly, like it was unsure if it was allowed to speak. Captain, incoming transmission. Jace straightened. From where? The AI paused. Unknown. No coordinates. No frequency. Message is silent. He frowned. Then how do you know it's a message? The AI answered, because it has weight. Jace's breath caught for a moment. Wait. Before he could respond, the screen lit up with something new. Not an image, not text. A feeling. That was the only way to describe it. As if the ship was projecting emotion into the room. A wave of calm curiosity. No pressure, no demand. Just presence. He stood and walked toward the screen. The black sphere outside began to glow. Faint lines appeared across its surface like veins of light forming slow patterns. And then, just for a second, he saw something behind it. Not a ship, not a creature, but space itself bending in a way that made no sense. Folding inward, like an eye trying to see from the other side. He whispered, "They're not far anymore, are they?" Thelira replied, "They never were." Suddenly, the floor of the ship grew warm. Not hot, not dangerous, just gently warm, like morning sunlight. Jace stepped back. The air itself began to hum, as if a song was starting that hadn't been sung in a very long time. Thelira turned toward him, her expression more serious than ever. "You have to answer now." He looked at her. "Answer what?" "The question. They've been forming since the moment you chose to stay." He looked around. "But I don't know the question." She stepped forward. "You do. You've always known it. It's the question every human asks when they stare at the stars." Jace stood silently. Then, he whispered, "Are we alone?" She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She only stepped back and said, "Now, answer it." He looked at the window. Again, the black sphere pulsed once with light, as if reacting to his words. So he took a deep breath. "We've always wondered if someone else was out there," he said quietly. "Not just to prove we're not alone, but to understand who we really are, because when we look out and see nothing, we start looking inward. Sometimes that's more frightening." The lights in the cabin dimmed slowly, leaving only the soft glow of the stars forming again outside. Jace kept speaking. "If you've been watching us, you know our faults, our fear, our confusion. But maybe you also saw that we try, even when we don't know how, even when we fall short, we still try." A pulse of soft blue light moved across the ship's walls. Gentle, not cold, not sharp. Jace paused. "If this is about what it means to be human, then I'll say this. We're not perfect, but we care. And sometimes, that's more powerful than answers." The silence that followed was thick, like the air was holding still to listen. Then the screen changed. No sound, no words, just one clear image. A hand open, reaching, not human, not alien, something in between. Floating in darkness, waiting. Thelira stepped beside him, her voice almost a whisper. "They heard you." He turned to her. "What now?" She gave a small, quiet smile. "Now, you're ready." "Ready for what?" "For the final step." And outside the ship, the black sphere began to open, not breaking apart, but unfolding, like layers of space being turned inside out. Behind it was not a planet, not a station, but something that looked like a door, a doorway made of light and thought, moving, breathing. It wasn't built, it had become, and now it was waiting. For him. Jace stepped closer to the window. No fear, just wonder. The silence had ended. Now, it was time for his voice to become part of something greater.